Okay. Hey, Rooster, do that again. Oh, oh, he's going to crow. These are the neighbor's chickens, and they're happy. There you go. And they're happy to give me fertilizer for the garden. Enough of them. It's another. Oop, I got to scroll out. Another Jim Miller's garden today. And everything is doing good. Especially this tomato here. That's supposed to be a pineapple tomato. And there's 6 plants of those that Nana got. And she'd be happy they're going to be decent sized. I reinforced their on the trellises, makeshift trellises yesterday, and they're looking good. I'll start here. The watermelons. And where's that one? There's one trying to grow, bear fruit. We'll see. It might be waiting for rain to come up. And here are the butternut squash. I think there's 4 of them that are doing 4 squashes. Yeah, there's 4. And 4 plants, 4 squashes. Usually they'll keep going, climbing outward, and they'll put additional squashes on later. And here is the mess of squash and pumpkins. Volunteer. I brought them down here quite a while ago, and I finally got. Where is that? I finally got a pumpkin or squash or whatever it's going to be. It might be one of those that they grow fairly big, and they get a top on them, or a narrow top and a wider bottom. They're kind of interesting to carve for jack-o'-lanterns. And I don't have any viewers. I have to. Oh, I got a couple viewers. Okay, everything's good. Right now, I'm going to pollinate this. I'm going to take a male flower on this squash and take it down here. And it's hard to do one-handed. There's the male. Hard to do. Yeah, there, I got it. I think it's a stamen. Well, that was 5th grade biology, and the bees are doing it too, but I'm going to make sure it's pollinated. And it's got a long looking squash on it. That's going to be interesting. It was planted here. These were supposed to be all tomatoes, volunteer tomatoes, but the squash hijacked, got on board, and it's crawling out of the tomato line. And I just let it go. It's producing. And there's a lot of small tomatoes on these volunteers. Tomatoes. So those had a hard time. They got a fungus, and I put a concoction of baking soda, dishwashing detergent, and geez, what's the other thing? Soap, detergent. I forgot. Give me a second. It's three. It's baking soda. Oh, it's vegetable oil, and it's supposed to make it stick to the plants, and it kills well, it seemed to work on these. It held back the fungus. They were really sick looking, and they come back to life, and they're adding tomatoes. So I guess on those I kept them reasonably alive. Here I got red potatoes. They're getting closer to digging. I dug 8 hills of my Yukon potatoes yesterday, and I laid them out in the sun, and some of them got a little bit of sunburn on them for just laying out there. So I think their skins are still pretty tender. I dug up the ones that were dying back the most, so I'm gonna wait a week or so to start digging again, and they'll be a little bit more riper and ready to store. And right here are some sweet potatoes. Nana wanted these purple sweet potatoes. They're crawling around nicely. And once these potatoes are gone, they're going to share this area here with the watermelon and other things that decide to crawl in. So this area with the potatoes removed should fill in with garden vegetables. Right here through the fence is the back side of my third planting of corn. It is tall as the fence. On this end, the other end is shorter, and I don't understand why exactly. I hope all of it produces. And here's these pineapple tomatoes. They all have a good number of tomatoes on them. And here is what they call a Big Zack tomato. It's got a lot on them. Pretty good size on this one. So, that one's decent big. That one down there is, I've seen them a lot bigger. And here's another little group of volunteer tomatoes. And here are some squash, volunteer squash. They'll fill in this area around the peppers. These are giant Marconi peppers. Nana wanted them. I'm going to ask her if she wants them green or red. They're on these first 2 plants. They're pretty much full sized, and they'll turn red in time. And here are some more. They're smaller, and there's a couple big ones on that plant. And here is another big row of volunteer tomatoes that started out better. They were a little bit thinner. There wasn't so many plants per inch, and they did better. So don't plant them. These down here were just absolutely, you couldn't separate them. They were just crowded. Brought them down, and now they're finally doing pretty decent. I bet 90% of them died out, but that's they had to die out. The stronger ones survived, and they're going. Okay, here is my second corn. It's just got done pollinating, and it's looking really nice. I should be picking it for next week. Next week or so, I'm going to be picking this patch of, there's 15 hills of corn with at least 3 stalks of corn in them, which makes it, I think, 45 plus. I bet it's like 55 stalks of corn. A lot of them got, like this one, at least two here, are trying to say, well, that's going to be a viable ear, most likely. And a lot of them this year put on 2 ears, and I'm really happy with that. And, I'm going to show you something. By this swing, I put in a few squash, and they're really slow. Sunlight's really poor here. They're pretty much going to have to crawl out and uphill here to grow better, because they need a little bit more sun. We got several months for them to grow, and eventually they're going to do stuff. The same here with these cantaloupes. I put them here. They get limited sun. They're fairly healthy. They were kind of sick here recently, and they're coming along. I'll try to train them to go out here on this lawn, and maybe they'll put some cantaloupes on it. Who knows? And here is my beefsteak tomatoes. There's 13 of them. This one here is absolutely loaded. It's probably got over 20 tomatoes on it, and they'll start ripening probably next week. Like, here's some here, there's some there. I'll go up through them. There's a bunch there. This planter had three tomatoes plants in the pot, and they're really coming along. Each plant's probably got a good amount of tomatoes. And here's that one, and this one here. Oh boy, it's all over the place. There's gonna be a lot of them. And this one here, there's basically two types of tomatoes. There's one called a determinate and indeterminate, and this one here is definitely a determinate. That means that it grows a certain height and then it stops growing. This one actually doesn't. Well, this might. I can see a little bud there. It may continue growing. A lot of these here got healthy tops where they're going to grow taller as we go through the summer, and maybe put some more tomatoes on. Yesterday I had to prop this. I took whatever I can get, this pipe and this little tube here, like I think that's a garden stake or garden climbing tube. It was over at the neighbors. When they left lots of junk, and I took advantage of it and brought it over here to use on the garden. And if you look under here, there's one that's got like dry rot in it. They say it's a nutrition issue, and that's the only one I see. So that one there, I'll harvest and salvage the top and put in a chili or something else. Here is the cabbages. They're getting like pretty big for a green cabbage. And this one was harvested, and you can see there's a little buds down here that will grow like fist-sized cabbages that are maybe harvestable. I'm going to check this one here. This one is really, oh, there we go. I feel it now. It's taking its sweet time putting the head on. It was with another one in the planter, and it's got its own strategy on growing. Here's a volunteer tomato, and that won't really compete for the cabbage. Cabbage, got buds on it too. It looks nice. And there's a little tomato crawling out of the edge. I'll leave it. And there's this, it's funny how this one here is small. And this one up here is larger, but this plant was very tiny when I brought it out to transplant. So you never know how they'll go. They're all okay. There's going to be plenty of cabbage for slaw, sauerkraut, or whatever we decide to do. This one's got two, and like last week I said, that one has a pointy end. It could be different. It looks like a Jersey Wakefield. That's kind of weird that it has a different shape of head. Okay, and here's a group of volunteers, squash and pumpkins I brought down, and they're really starting to put on. Okay, one there, one here, there's one there. They're all over. I don't know if there's any there. There's two up here on this border. This is a long one and a funny little light green one. And here is some volunteer tomatoes. This is my worst group that I put in this setup of these fence posts. And there's a taller one it's got tomatoes too. So it's got tomatoes. These little guys, they're coming along. They're looking pretty healthy. This dry, hot weather is helping them out quite a bit. They had a problem with the molds and mildews or whatever's on them, and I sprayed them, and they're coming along. But this hot weather has less dampness, and they're doing better now. So another one of those light pumpkins, and this one here. This has been pretty much this size for quite a while, so it's going to be ripening pretty soon. Okay, this one here. There's a little one, and there's another one. That's kind of I had a lot of them last year that looked like that, and they had a very, very hard shell. And I still got one in the house. It just, I don't know, I was thinking of making pumpkin pie. I'm lazy, and I didn't get around to it. It's just sitting there, and it'll either start rotting and go to the chickens, or I'll just leave it and let it sit for more time. Who knows what I'll do with it. Okay, here's another little group of volunteer tomatoes. Does this one got, I don't think they're not setting. They're not setting yet. There's a little bit of nibbles on there. That's nibbles or just leaves that died off. Have to watch that. And there's a tomato coming out of that hill of squash. And this vine here, when the sun's out bright, it wilts real bad. But when it gets more shade, it looks better. It looks good. It's just, I think these other squash are out competing it for water. So I really don't want to water these squash because last year I was looking at my videos and pictures, and these squash, there was a 2-month virtually no rain period, and they just kept putting on squash all summer, and I didn't water them because we were just getting so many squash. I said that ain't worth working with. Here's the better looking volunteer tomato in the fence post cage. It's over the fence post. It's got a good number of tomatoes, lots of little ones. Those would be good in chili. I might get a lot this year of all kinds of tomatoes, And I may, instead of canning them, I may just cut them up and freeze them. And because I had some last year, I froze a good number of tomatoes, and I thought they tasted fine when I put them through the food processor. And I put them in a Ziploc, and then I would put a grocery bag over the top of it, make sure there's no air gets in it. And that worked, and that might be the strategy this year. We got lots of freezer space. I may freeze several packs of tomatoes. Canning takes a lot of energy and a lot of time and, resources to get that done. It's fine because I'm using juice from 2019, and it's still really, really good in chilies and stuff. So there's two different ways you can think about working through these tomatoes. So, and here's my lettuce. I may grab a leaf or two if I have a sandwich, but it's starting to bolt out and it's starting to bloom right here. And I like to, this patch here was actually from seed that I did harvest from last year. So I'm going to go do this year. And it looks like it's going to produce a good, quite a bit of seed. These little plants are nice and healthy. They'll flower out, and I'll cut them and dry them in the house, and then we'll have seed. Here are white onions, and they're looking good. Their bulbs are starting to swell. This one here is more visible, and it's quite large. And the other ones are probably going to be, hopefully, of that size. 2 weeks ago, this one here was just pretty much a stem to the ground, and in a couple weeks, it is expanded out, pushed out, and it looks like it's got two. I've been digging my onions almost every year on July 1st, just because the tops were dying back and falling over. And I haven't seen any. Well, I see this one here. This one's fallen over, but it's kind of growing that way. So it's technically not falling over. I see a few that are kind of leaning over. So when most of these have fallen over, there'll be time to pull them up and cure them out. See, I've got this end of the garden is look through. Here are, at this end of this, these are the Yukons I was talking about here. This one here, I dug 8 of them that were looking like that the other day, and they were fine. I was digging them because I'm concerned about these hot days and moistness in the ground, and they might be starting to rot, but I didn't find any of that going on. So I'll wait. See these here, these red ones at the top here. There's 8 of these red Pontiacs, and they're a week or two away. They're still good and green. Like this one. This one's actually growing a little. It's maybe supplying nutrition to a little potato down low, and there still might be small potatoes that are growing down there, so I'm just going to let that grow for a while longer. And here are these turkey craw beans, and I've been eating them a lot. I would cook them with potatoes, and Put butter, salt, and pepper, and they're delicious. So I've been trying to keep ahead of them. It looks like we may be canning beans sometime next week, I hope, because all these other vegetables are coming. I'm just getting overrun. You're gonna have to can them, and a lot of these leaves, especially on the other side of the fence here, are yellowing. And well, there's blooms. I mean, blooms and top leaves are healthy, and that means, well, here this vine looks like it's in good shape. There's lots of little vines. It's probably shedding. I'm thinking it might be shedding out some leaves so that they can allow sun in. See, look at this one. It's crawling up along. It'll probably get on this gate, and I'll just let it go on the gate. It'll look pretty interesting there. Here's the other side where there's a lot of these beans. These, if you find one, see, it comes off. They'll just drop. It drops leaves, and we'll just see what happens. If they end up not producing, that's fine, because we've already gotten a good amount of beans from them. Okay, here's the cantaloupe, and they're flowering, but I don't know if there's any. Oh, I see one. There's a little cantaloupe there, so they're starting to produce. And here is some, I want this to happen. I don't know what you're gonna do. This is some Jersey Wakefield cabbage, and this is the third year of them off the same plant. And this one is deciding, I want to be it's got some firmness down there, so it might be one of those crazy things where I'll get a third year of cabbage off that plant, and then go from there. Volunteer tomatoes. Got them. I got I think this is, what is this? Rebar that was made into a stake. Looked like it was a homemade one. I think it came with that campaign sign group that they didn't ask for their stuff back, so I'm just going to use it. And here's a tomato that I found in the squash. I think where is this? Where did it originate? Ooh, that's soft. Where's the stem? Oh, the mystery of the stem. Well, okay, I can kind of remember now. It came up on the edge of this hill of acorn squash. Right next over here is some compost. I put kitchen scrap compost in a pile and covered it with dirt, and I got some potatoes trying to survive, grown out of it. I did it so when the squash crawl, they'll send down, oh, this is actually a squash, out of the compost too. And there's another, no, that one's a separate one that wasn't in the compost. So the thing was, I was gonna see if the squash would crawl and then send down runners into the compost, and then they'd have a lot of nutrition. I just ended up squash coming out of the compost. So, okay, acorn squash. There's a lot of little ones here. They came up too thick, pretty thick, and these are edible. They're going to be fine to cut up and bake or whatever we're going to do with them. Is this bigger? That's a good sized one. So that's the hill of acorn squash. Oh, this is, where'd you originate? This squash here, that's a volunteer. Where'd you come from? Oh, you came out of the compost. That was the compost. Squash that came out of the compost when I brought it down here. And where's your... This one here's got, I think it's got a squash somewhere. When you have a big garden. Oh, that one died out. It's gonna probably put on here. It's gonna put on squash here eventually. And here is these are what is this? Oh. These are nightshade berries, a nightshade plant. I had some plants last year that just showed up, and now they're all over the garden. I see some over there. I see some small ones here around this onion, and maybe get enough of them for pie. All right. And here is some Cherokee purple tomatoes. That one's really nice. Two nice big ones there. Plant looks good. Here is a bush Goliath. Lots of tomatoes. Plant's looking good. Here is, oh boy, that's huge. This is what a Big Zack tomato, a large one, looks like. Big as my hand. And there's another large one across. And okay, what are these again? Oh, these are Brandywines. Yeah, this tomato was the last of the ones store-bought tomatoes that put tomatoes on the vine. I think there's four for now. The top looks good. The top looks like it's gonna produce more. And here is that's a Mr. Stripey. How come? Okay, why does it do that? And that one's kind of a crummy tomato. That looks like a one for the chili pot. Mr. Stripey there, and this is another Brandywine. There's already been one harvested off and it's got several down there looking great. While I'm here is this humongous, I better stay off of that. If I get too close, the ants get on me. A sunflower, fairly close to 10 feet tall. Those ants, they like to bite. Look at you go. Okay, I did that one. And here is another Brandywine. Yeah, that's a Brandywine. Good number of tomatoes. Very nice. A nice top here is probably going to put several more. Okay, here's a row of, and I've never planted these before. These are Kennebecs, large plants. And they're starting to die back. And they're supposed to yield a high yield potato. So I like to get 30 pounds off of that. Just guessing. Okay, here's my volunteer row tomatoes and planters using the neighbor's chicken manure, and they're looking quite healthy. I water them every day if they need it or not, because it hasn't been raining. So, and here is where corn was yesterday, and I did a little short video of that process, and I got replacement plants there already, the volunteer tomato and some volunteer squash, and they'll just fill this area in. And I also got a volunteer marigold, and that was the neighbor's marigolds from last year, and they're a big marigold. This might get probably 4 feet high, because she had over there some big, large, and they're good looking plants. So I'll have some marigolds that are large this year. And here's the carrots. I dug some and I'm eating a stew off of them. They're good. They really add to it. And I'm just kind of waiting. They're not going anywhere. They're not trying to seed on me, and they're not trying to their leaves are not burning back and dying, which I've seen other years where carrots would the leaves will start to burn up, and it's like they're going dormant. They're hanging in there, so I'll just leave them. I guess larger carrots may be the thing. And here is a volunteer tomato that came up in the carrot row. I guess it's 2 tomatoes. And they've actually had really decent sized tomatoes on it. And today I re-staked it, dug a hole in the ground, put in a little tree branch, and put dirt around the stake and packed it in. And it was kind of laying on the ground, so I got it back up. And this corn here, it's going to be gone in a couple days. I'll harvest the ears, and I think I'm going to harvest a good number today, and then I'll chop the stalks like that, so I'll get light on this other stuff that's growing. And let's see what we got. We don't have any volunteers there. There's a volunteer, there's a nightshade and a squash. That squash could just branch out and really grow. There is a little marigold down there. That's one of the neighbors. The squash will probably overrun it, but it's going to be there. And let's see, let's look at the sunflower head. There's a little one here. But this one, I hope there's not too many ants. And I don't see any bird damage yet, but it's about ripe. It's what they call an oil seed sunflower. It was, what did I do? Oh, I did last year. I brought some manure from the chickens, and it had sunflower seeds in it. Some of them grew in the garden, and this is one of the descendants of that. So this is like the second year, and I know it's not a giant sunflower. It's the one from the neighbor's chicken that they didn't eat. Oh, that's a funny head. It was gonna open up. And there's several large, giant sunflowers. I plant them mostly for looks. It is, boy, look at that. We're getting toward 11 foot high. I was gonna get my tape measure out and kind of like, I would measure up to here, and then I'd measure up to the top and add, and then we'd have that height. And I'm thinking that's gotta be very close to 11 foot. And here is my, is that my fifth or fourth? Fourth. This is my fourth planting of corn. I put these in a couple weeks ago. I put the seed in and it came up and they're looking good. Plant 4 seeds to get 3, and let's see, 7 hills, one that didn't come up out of 7 times 28, 27 or 28 seeds come up. So that's a good percentage. Here's a volunteer tomato that was in the onion row. I left it. And here is a nightshade plant that was in the onion row and I left it. And another tomato I left. So they're going to be a lot of stuff here in a few weeks. That's got some size. A cantaloupe volunteer that was in the onion row too. And here is a row of Yukon Golds. And that one at the end is starting to die back the most. This one here's got a branch or two that's dying back pretty fast, so it's getting close to digging. And this, like I said, is probably, it may not be a Cannabec, it might, or maybe a Cannabec instead of a Yukon, because it's a very different size. And here is my third planting of corn, and it looks good. It's funny how it's growing. There's different heights. It's like those right here. There's about 3 hills on this side are smaller. It was more yellow than the other, and it's getting some fairly good green color, and I'm hoping that it's gonna pollinate correctly. I've had some that varied in height in rows of corn, and I've had gaps. I had areas where there was no, I didn't get ears off of because the pollination wasn't working right. It may have been a nutrition or the soil. What I've been doing with this when I plant is I spay it up real good and then plant. And this year it's kind of reverted to that. We'll just see over the next few weeks what it's going to be. And here's that big bush Goliath that was a foot high when we bought it, and it's already had 8 tomatoes harvested off of it, and they've been eaten, and Nana says they're delicious and sweet, so that was a good plan. Some tomatoes in this squash. And here's some of these kind of, there's a leaf in the way. Big squash that we had a lot of those shaped last year. Those were some cool jack-o'-lanterns that we made from them. And I hope they're not as, I kind of like them where the shell is super hard because they don't deteriorate very fast. And here's a little one. These are volunteers that weren't moved right here along this shed. And they might be the reason this corn is not looking as good. They're taking nutrients and space, and probably are taking CO2 from them. Who knows what they're doing. And down here is I guess I'll go around this way. Here's another one of those volunteer. No squash on it yet. It's getting a lot of competition. It's got tomatoes and it's got asparagus shade in it. So, but it looks good. It'll do something eventually. And here's some more. There's 3 groups of volunteer tomatoes that I moved down here, and I put the posts around. Well, that one, those 2 there are pretty big on this That's some decent size. That's good. Those look like going to be smaller. And here's a little squash. This came up right here. It's got a nice, like, flat, nice, pretty dark squash. Oh, I need to wrangle these. Oops, I wonder what that does. I need to get these in well, I can stick them up in there. They probably won't do much because they've got too much shade. Keep them in the fence. Here is this other tomato. Lots of little ones down there. That's looking good. Here's that nightshade, another nightshade, and here's that asparagus keeps on running up shoots. Next year it's going to be harvested, like all spring. It's strong enough. The squash that's towards getting ripe. And there's squash along the fence. Just volunteer squash everywhere. Okay, here's a nice looking tomato that's come out of this squash hill. There's another one of those marigolds. And here, I thought this was a pepper. It looks like a pepper. And it's got these little yellow flowers. And I think it's just a damn weed impersonating a pepper. I was excited that it could be a pepper, a volunteer pepper. And I think it's a weed. I'll just let it go for now. And here is an acorn squash. It's mostly an acorn squash. It's a volunteer. I need to cut that one and another one and get in the house, and we'll put some onions and herbs and bake it, and it's pretty good. And there's George. Another pumpkin that just came on. And here's a classic pumpkin that's starting to ripen. That's like the earliest one to start. Here's a nice looking tomato I decided that wasn't planted by me. That was a volunteer outside the border I put around the squash. So that's going to be interesting what that's going to end up being. Oh. I barely see this acorn squash. I'm kind of looking for new. And here's this long, like a pumpkin-y. I got a pumpkin in the house they need to cut up and use. And that's a candidate. I don't know, I might cut it. I may cut it, I'm not sure. And take it in. Hey. And here's another pumpkin. And here is, hey, you might not make it. This has been threatening to bloom for days. And I have a feeling it's going to drop. It's going to break off and not have a fruit on it. It's taken too long. So, and this plant is kind of funny. It came out real quick, and then a lot of its leaves are yellowing, and I guess it got too excited and it's got an issue. Here's a funny looking little long green. It's got to be zucchini in that. And here's like a new small pumpkin. Okay. Here's a tomato coming up, and Here, this one here really looks like a acorn squash. And there's a squash down there. Oh yeah, I was too busy with the fake pepper. And here's this really large volunteer group that I fenced, tomatoes that I fenced in. Some rather pretty large tomatoes on it, and large and many. So this one gets lots of sun and it gets a lot of water from the driveway. So it's doing good. And I went through this squash, and here's my toilet tomato. I already had some of these tomatoes in chili, or no, it's not chili, it's that stew I made. And here's some more to harvest and hold for the next. And here is the toilet tank with a squash in it. I need to harvest it and take inside for them to use. Cantaloupe a cantaloupe in a planter. Oh, there's a watermelon coming out the backside. A squash, cantaloupe. These watermelons, you put them in with other things, other vine, and the other stuff picks on it. It shades it out and then it dies. And that one is not doing all that great. Here's the pineapples. Maybe next year I'll get a fruit off of one of those. You're supposed to put a rotten apple in a bag and put over the top of it, and it's supposed to make it set a pineapple. And here's a big squash that's just this week, a new one. And here is a bucket tomato that's got a good number on it. I've been planting this buck for like 4 years straight with basically the same soil. I add some soil to the top and it still produces. And it seems like there's something lacking in the soil where it gets big. And I think this happened last year, and the tops die out. So it makes tomatoes, but then it kind of quits. It kind of quits growing because it's lacking something. So who knows what's going on with it. And that's probably it for the garden this week. And it'll be a lot different next week. So it was kind of, I did a video last week in the evening and I got a lot of views. Looks like today it's not as good. But the evenings are really hot this time of year. So, and I'm hot now. And I'm gonna go rest a little and pick some of this corn because it's getting ready. So this is Jim Miller. And that's it for today, Jim Miller's Garden. And boy, a lot of veggies. Thanks for watching. Well, till later.